Okay, good morning, folks. My name is Jamie Vieira. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for the Emerald Resort, Cape Cod Irish Village, a few other affiliated businesses. It's my pleasure to be moderating today's Wastewater workshop. To follow up on Erin, a big thanks to the Yarmouth Chamber for putting this together in collaboration with the Dennis and Greater Hyannis Chamber. A thanks to Ken Smith and the staff at Thirwood for hosting us here. And a big thanks to our lead sponsor, Cape and Coast Bank, and I'd like to have John come up for a few minutes to give some introductory remarks. I will.
Good morning, everybody. It's great to have everyone here. And on behalf of Cape and Coast Bank, formerly the Cooperative Bank of Cape Cod, we would just like to welcome everyone. Obviously, this is a very important topic that we'll all be discussing ad nauseum for a lot of years to come. So we welcome all the panelists and so forth, but most of all, we just want everyone to ask questions and get as much as they can out of this event. And we've sponsored this series so that all of our business community in the three towns can really get as much exposure to a lot of different topics as possible. So keep your eye out on all the various emails that the three chambers send out. So if you like this series and the social media series we did before, there's more coming. So thank you very much for being here today. Applause is okay.
Just a few items. There are some handouts that you will see going around the room, and just to let you know that anything that is handed out today will be emailed to anyone who's a registered participant coming here today, so you'll get that information. I do have to let you all know that we are recording the session here today, and that will also be uploaded onto the Chamber website so you can view at a later date if you so choose. Also, for other information, you can always go to the Town of Yarmouth website because they have a lot of information there as well for this project. So without further ado, let's talk to our folks here on the panel. We have Jeff Colby from the Yarmouth DPW. Also in the house, I know we have Lori Rizzola from the Water Department. Cape Cod 5, Chris Merrill is here. From Cape and Coast Bank, Rob Carey. From Rockland, we have Nanette Davidson. And we have Chuck Carey from Carey Commercial. So I guess without further ado here, let's kind of talk. We're all seeing the work that's going on. It's a daily occurrence that's there, but it begs the fundamental first question of when will folks be able to connect? And Jeff, I'm going to have you start off with that important topic.
Certainly. Thank you for having this. Hopefully you can hear me. I can use the microphone if necessary. But we also have Bob Rittenauer, our town administrator here, and Ryan is our ombudsman with the wastewater department. So there's lots of resources here. If there's any questions I can't answer, hopefully we've got a good team here that can. But people will be needing to connect in early 2028 is the real short answer. You do have a handout that's sent out to you that has some of that information, but that's a little bit of a moving target based upon construction of the wastewater treatment facility. So that right at this point is the critical path item. About half of our collection system in Yarmouth along Route 28 is installed and ready for connection, but obviously it has to have a place to go. And so when the treatment plant is up and running and able to receive flow, then those people can connect. And we expect that to be in early 2028.
And we're currently in phase 1 of 8 anticipated phases, is that right?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. And if your property is located in phase 1, are you required to hook up?
Yes, you're required to hook up. If a pipe is available for you to make a connection, you're required to. That's something the Board of Health put together as a policy for connections about 2 years ago now when we first started the program. And that it's really important for people to connect because in order to show progress with our nitrogen removal and cleaning up the waters within Yarmouth, we need to have people connected to do so.
If I'm a property owner in Yarmouth, is there a place where I can go to find out where my property is in connection with phase 1 or 2 or 8?
Yep, absolutely. We have a good resource on the Yarmouth Wastewater page on the town website. Also brought along 2 poster boards here today. They're on either side and encourage people to come up and take a look after the formal part of the program, if you have questions, it shows the contracts associated with Phase 1, and if you are in Phase 1, that's the one to my left here. To the right is the 8-phase plan that was just mentioned. So if you're not in Phase 1, which is under construction today, and you're in a future phase, that will give you an indication of what that looks like. But all this is available on the town website as well.
You mentioned that maybe in 2028 as a connection date. At the time of connection, how are folks going to be notified and come to learn that the system's up and ready and that they have a responsibility to then connect? How does that process work?
That process is through the Board of Health. Right now, everyone that's on a septic system or on-site wastewater treatment facility for some of the larger facilities is permitted to do so by the Board of Health. So it's the Board of Health that will send a notice out ordering you to connect to the town's wastewater system. That'll happen, again, early 2028, depending on the progress of construction. It'll take several months, I'm sure, for all those notices to go out. Once you receive a notice, you'll have 2 years to connect. But again, that's through the Board of Health process, and there will be an official notice mailed to every property owner.
So in that 2-year period of time to connect, can you help explain to folks, so we're all seeing the work that's going on, there's going to be a connection to the street. Can you tell us what is the town's responsibility in regards to connection, and then what is the landowner's responsibility with regards to connection?
Absolutely. As part of this process, the town is putting we call it a stub. It's really a sewer connection right up to the property line of each individual property. And as part of that construction process, there was notices sent out to property owners about the location of that, and if you wanted to have some changes to that, there is information available on the town website, again, with the construction plans that show all of those sewer service connections. So there is good information out there. It's also been looked at by the town's engineer as to where the best place for everyone to connect to. So that's what's anticipated in the construction, but we have had some people that have wanted that to be moved or changed, and there is a process in which you can submit a form for where you'd like that to be shifted within your property. But with that said, the town is responsible to bring that service connection right up to your property line, and then it's the property owner's responsibility to make that connection when the time comes. Typically that involves abandoning your septic system that you currently have on site, pumping it out and filling it with sand as part of that service connection, and making the connection from your building's plumbing system that exits the building to that connection at the street location.
So there is a place online where a property owner can go and see where the engineer presently has designed the stub for their property, is that right?
Absolutely. That's on the town website with all of the wastewater information. It's by contract. There's very detailed construction plans that show that on the town's website.
All right. And you mentioned that there's a form that would be available. Is that available now for the stub relocation?
Absolutely. That's also available online.
All right. Would it behoove folks to do that sooner rather than later, I guess?
Absolutely, right.
Okay.
Much more difficult to move it once it's in place, right?
All right. No, that makes perfect sense. All right. So let's talk a little bit about when you do have to connect, maybe you can amplify a little bit more. What do you have to do with your existing septic system?
So the existing system needs to be abandoned, and there's a permit through the Board of Health to do so. It's all part of the connection permit requirement. But you'll need to pump that out, so your septic tank will need to be pumped out. That happens on a regular basis anyway, but this will be one final pump out of the waste in the septic system, and then that can simply be filled in. It does not need to be completely removed. Typically these are large subsurface concrete structures, and that can be costly to fully remove them. So you don't have to do that. We have had some discussions with some people that have opted to do that because they have some expansion plans for their building, or they want to put in some other appurtenances that require them to remove that. So in that particular case, the property owner can opt to remove it, but they don't have to.
And there is information available at Town Hall for where individuals can find where their septic system is now?
Absolutely. That's also online, or you can go to the health department at Town Hall, but all of that septic information that we have on record is available now, yes.
Is there any part of your existing septic system that you have to use or can use as part of this new hookup to the sewer?
The one exception would be a grease trap. So if you are a restaurant and you currently have a grease trap, that will be a necessary component as part of the sewer connection, because grease is not a good thing to put in a sewer system. That causes backups and problems. So there will still be a requirement for grease to be treated separately, and that will be through the grease trap. So that is a one component that would remain.
For purposes of doing the work, will there be companies that the town will make available to folks to find that they can then hire to do this work?
Absolutely. So just like on the water department site, there is a list of approved contractors. We will also have that on the wastewater site as well. So we're currently developing that list, but again, it's a very similar type of contractor that does that. So it's very likely it'll be almost the same list that can install water in Yarmouth. Will also be able to make sewer connections.
So while we're on the topic of connection, let's talk the cost of connections. All right, there are three, as I understand it: the betterment, the connection cost itself, and a sewer user fee. Let's talk about the connection costs to begin with there. And essentially, what is it that you're paying for as part of the connection cost, if you know?
Yeah, so the connection cost is the piping that runs from your building's waste line that leaves the building, or just after the grease trap, if that needs to remain if you're a restaurant. And that connection all the way to the stub that the town is leaving at your property line. In some cases, there'll be a need for manholes or multiple lines that come together. In that particular case, if there are multiple lines, there'll be a manhole structure that needs to accommodate those combination of lines. But those are the typical cost, and obviously the installer, the contractor that puts that in, you need to pay that contractor. I do know that there are some property owners, businesses that are reaching out to contractors now to get a general idea of what that looks like. Don't want to plug any particular contractor, but there's many of these types of contractors out there that install septic systems, that install sewer connections in other towns, that are more than willing to meet with property owners, business owners, to give a rough idea of what that cost might be.
If you're going to put in a septic system today, I encourage you to hire an engineer, the contractor, and pull a permit, and maybe even need Board of Health review. Does the town envision that a property owner has to get a board review for purposes of getting the connection made, or is it the contractor's just going to pull a permit?
There will be a need for a plan to be submitted to the sewer division, and there'll be a permit associated with that. So it'll be very similar to the process you described for a septic system. You won't need to have a board review in the sense that you need relief or a variance or anything like that. So it is a simpler process, but there still will be a permit and review that's necessary as far as a sewer connection.
The other costs we'll talk about just briefly. What is the betterment assessment? What does that mean?
The betterment is the portion of the collection system that's constructed that betters the property. We expect that to be approximately 15% of the overall cost for phase one. That number is still being worked through because we're under construction now and we don't have all of the final costs associated with construction. But that betterment will then be applied to the individual property owners based upon flow. So based upon how much current water usage and what that looks like from a calculation with the Department of Environmental Protection on the flow associated with the property.
And how is that paid?
And that will be paid to the town through a assessment, which is essentially very similar to your tax bill. It'll also be on the tax bill. It's payable over 20 years, and so it's something that carries with the property as well. So if for some reason the property sells after 5 or 10 years, that betterment can continue with the property and be the next property owner's responsibility because that property was bettered. And that is something that, again, continues for 20 years and can be carried with the property.
Excuse me, can I just ask a question?
Sure.
Just want to go back to the previous topic, the connection activity. You mentioned a plan, a permit, and a review. Can we expect that our contractor will manage that for us?
Absolutely. Contractors typically could do that. I think that's many cases. If you have a septic system put in today, you might just contact a contractor that can then work that process for you. Some of those contractors have people in-house that can do plans, and others will contract with an engineer or some other designer to do that for them. But yeah, starting with a contractor is a good place to start.
I guess just one question on the betterment while we're still talking about that. Does the betterment assessment start when you are available to hook up, or does it start once you actually hook up? So you mentioned you have 2 years from the time of notification to hook onto the system. Are you going to see betterment assessments as soon as you're notified that you can, or does the betterment defer until you actually hook up, if you know?
Yeah, the betterment will start when it's available to you. So yes, if you take 2 years, you'll still have the betterment that was when that pipe connection was available to you.
The other charge is a sewer user fee. What is that?
So the sewer user fee is based upon your water usage, so it's very similar to when you pay a water bill, you're going to pay a user fee in order to have a connection to the wastewater system. This fee will go to the overall operations and cost to run the treatment plant.
Same question on the user fee as the betterment. Are you going to be assessed the user fee at the time you're notified that you can go on, or at the time that you begin using the system?
The time you begin using the system. So once you're connected, you'll get the regular bills. It'll be part of that water bill you get. It'll be a line for water and a line for sewer. So until you're connected, you won't receive a bill.
Okay. You had a question, ma'am?
The question I had was, before you even get your contractor, should you not have an engineer come out either to your residence or to your business to give an estimate as to how much this is going to cost?
You could reach out to an engineer if you'd like. I do know that there's been some mailings out to property owners from engineers that are trying to solicit business, but I would suggest that they're not going to know the cost of construction, if you will. They might be able to give you a more general ballpark. I think it's probably better to reach out to a contractor that can give you the construction costs, because that's the majority of the cost. I think it's a relatively small percentage that's going to be to develop the plan, if you will.
I've heard the reverse. I've heard to get the engineering done first and then get your construction costs.
It really depends on the contractor. There's some contractors that rely on the engineers and say, hey, don't even call me till you have a plan. But I know in talking with several of the larger construction contractors, they're happy to meet with you without a plan, just to give you an overall cost. I mean, there's a wide variety of what those costs might look like. If you have a very simple connection, you might be looking at something that's only, $15,000, $20,000. Or there's going to be some pretty extensive connections for, larger facilities, larger restaurants that could be in excess of $50,000. So I think if I were in the situation of needing to make a connection, I'd want to know, what the range looks like, what the cost looks like based upon my specific circumstances. And I think a contractor can do that, but you certainly are more than welcome to also reach out to engineers as well.
Yep.
You mentioned that there would be an approved contractors list on the site. Do you have to use one of those contractors? And are you doing anything to make sure that their prices are competitive?
You will have to use someone that's approved by the town. That's to make sure that they have the capability, they're insured, those types of things. It's really a safety precaution to make sure that they have the knowledge and are able to make the connections. They have a history of doing that. It's a way of avoiding kind of fly-by-night, contractors, or somebody just wants to set up and, hey, I know that Yarmouth's about to have 550 sewer connections. Let me just go down there and just start up. We want to encourage people to, start up businesses, because I do believe there will be a lot of need for this. But we want to make sure they do it properly. So that's the reason for having a approved list. What was the second part of your question?
Competitive pricing.
Oh, competitive pricing. So when we review contractors, we're not typically looking at how competitive their prices are. So we would encourage people to get multiple prices to make sure that you're getting the best price.
Yes, ma'am.
The connection is done by a specific company. Do they also do like the filling of the septic system with the sand and things?
Yes, they will do everything associated with the connection.
So
Yeah.
you're dealing with just one contractor for that particular
That's correct.
thing?
Do you have another question, sir?
Did you mention any range for the betterment?
That again is very variable. If you have a very small kind of retail operation, I think sometimes we've used examples like the baseball card shop. That's going to be a very small betterment. If you have a much larger property with you know, a dozen tenants of varying usage, that's going to be a much larger betterment. So it is a very large.
What's an example of a small number?
A small number might be in the $50,000 range, and a larger number would be a couple $100,000 based upon, you know, large flows, large seat restaurants, things like that.
All right, Jeff, we're gonna,
I do have a question.
yes, ma'am, please.
Is that, so that, oh, that's one-time payment that can be spread over 20 years? Is that what I'm understanding?
Yeah, that's the case.
So
If,
the
if,
betterment is a one-time,
it's a one-time fee. If you choose to pay it all up front, you certainly can do that.
right? Is there a discount?
Well, you wouldn't be paying any interest fee associated with that. There's a
Right.
relatively modest interest fee if you choose for the 20-year option. It's 2% is what we anticipate for that interest. So you'd avoid any interest if you pay it all up front.
And that would be through the town, no bank in the
Correct.
middle, in the middle?
That's correct.
Okay, okay. And how many people in the first phase, 2 years from now, are going to, people and entities going to be needed to connect? They have 2 years to do that. How many do you anticipate? 1,000, 10,000?
In the first phase, we have approximately 550
Oh, that's
connections.
it.
Yes.
Will you limit the number of firms that can get on your list? So when you have 50, 25, you're not limiting that number that could provide that service, right?
That's correct. We're not artificially limiting that. We just want to
Right.
make sure they're qualified and licensed to do
Of
so.
course.
That's it.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Jeff, thanks for a minute. We've talked a little bit about costs, so let's turn our attention to how are we going to pay for this. So let me start, I guess in no particular order, with Rob, Cape and Coast. Will you tell us a little bit about financing options through your bank for folks? And maybe I'll start the first question with, really, we're talking about connection costs amongst all three of the banks that are represented here today. You're not going to be able to borrow your betterment costs, I would imagine, and you're not going to be able to borrow for your water bill necessarily. So we're really talking about all things associated with connection. So Rob, if you don't mind, could you tell us a little bit about what the bank has to offer?
Sure, thanks, Jamie.
You're welcome.
So, what I would start with, and if I heard you correctly, we're probably talking about, there were a bunch of different numbers said, somewhere between 15,000 and 50,000 would be the range you would think for a hookup?
Well, I think that some of the more extensive connections could be north of 50,000.
Okay. So we do have two different programs, you know, one for residential and then one for commercial. I'm on the commercial side, so I'll talk a little bit about the commercial side. The commercial loans we will do from $5,000 up to $100,000. We'll do amortizations, the period of time you could pay the loan back, in up to 10 years. I think one of the big challenges that you have, this is a good early stage discussion, but what we really need to know is what that cost is. So when you sit down and you're talking with either, the general contractor, or if you're having an engineer design it, the big question becomes, what do you need to finance? So once you have that number, the bank would offer up to 85% of financing of that number. And again, we would then stretch it over a 10 years period of time. There should be some ancillary costs associated with it, but we're not going to put a mortgage on the property. That's really critical. So you're not going to go through all the same processes that you would go through as if you had closed on a normal residential or commercial loan. So it keeps the costs down. I think the other thing that people always ask about is interest rate, what the typical cost is. And I would say, again, depends on where the economy is in 2 years' time from now. But I would say if you were, to close the loan right now, you'd be looking at somewhere around 10% for a loan closing. And you could do a couple different options. You could do a variable rate that changes every couple years, or you could do something that's locked over the full period of time. I think on the commercial lending universe, we operate in, shades of gray. So what really is helpful for us is to know, what is your ideal setup? Do you want to pay this over the longest period of time possible, or do you want to pay it in a shorter period of time? And then we kind of craft the mortgage based, or the note based on that.
You mentioned there would be no mortgage on the property, but what do you envision would be a form of security, if anything, for the bank?
That's a great question. So we do file what's a UCC, All Business Assets lien. It's $25, expense, so relatively inexpensive.
So pretty much everything you own but the property is securing the loan.
You got it.
All right. And that's standard in commercial lending practices
Yep.
now, so there's really nothing different about that?
That's correct.
All right. Okay, thank you. Chris, Cape Cod 5, anything you can tell us about what Cape Cod 5 has to offer?
So similar to Cape and Coast, Cape Cod 5 has been an early entrant into this. We were successful at the Outer Cape when they were doing their
Set down
tie-in
so they
for
can
solar as
capture.
well. So we do offer residential and commercial tie-ins as well. Our loans can go up to $10,000 to $150,000, and those are termed out for 10 years. If there is costs associated over $150,000, we can go above the 10-year threshold and term it out to 15 years, which is also enticing depending on what those costs come in at when you're talking with your contractor. Similar, we do take a UCC filing on all business assets. We require a credit score of 660 or better. So those are some of the types of structure that we would place for the commercial side. So it is important for businesses. It is a big infrastructure improvement for your business. So the cost, it can be daunting, but it has been successful. A lot of the customers on the Outer Cape at the bank have been very pleased with the program that we have in place, and it's helped them a great deal. So thank you.
Nanette, Rockland?
Good morning. And I have to agree with the gentleman. I think we're all on the same page here. At Rockland, was invited to this, and I worked with our team to put together a little program. However, now I'm finding out the financing isn't probably till 2028, so again, we don't have a crystal ball where the rates will be. But we are offering a 7-year term note, and the rate presently today would be about 7%. Again, we don't have a crystal ball where we're going to be in a couple years. And certainly it looks like I need to do my homework and see if I can go out to 10 years to be in competition. But 7 years, and we are waiving the origination fee. We're also looking at an ABA lien, UCC lien as well. And the larger ones may require real estate position. If we're talking, 250,000, I think I might have heard that as a number as well. So that's something we can look at individually. Like any loan, we're talking, credit score and cash flow to support the loan. But certainly we're going to work with each one of you and find a way to make it work. Okay?
Maybe a question for all three of you. The loan, is that taken out by the property owner, or is it taken out by the business owner, or do you envision a situation where, I'm the tenant, I run the business, my collateral is what's on the property, but the property owner just collects the rent? Who would be the borrower in that situation?
I think it would be the property owner. I've done a few out in Orleans and P-Town, and it was the property owner.
Okay. So then something.
More experience in it.
Yeah, I would echo that. It would most likely be the property owner that would be associated with all the cost with the tie-in.
I would agree. Yep.
Anything else any of you have about your lending programs before? I'm sure there may be some questions, but
Probably
please.
should just point out, Rockland Trust is a commercial bank, so we do not have the residential programs available. This is simply for the commercial properties.
Do you have residential, Chris?
Yeah, we do have residential and for commercial as well. So we do have a lengthy description on our website. If you are a resident and you want to tie in, we do have a program in place for that as well. Those specific terms and conditions are a lot different than the commercial side. So I'm not well versed in speaking to that, but one of our experts in our residential area could speak with one of you if you do have questions in that regards. But for the commercial, yeah, we definitely offer that. So, and like I said, we've been very successful in the Outer Cape with that tie-in program with business owners.
Yeah, so Cape and Coast has a residential and a commercial program, similar to Chris's comments, on the commercial side, the commercial side better. The residential, I believe, go up to 25,000. We do have some flyers that kind of break down everything that you can see on the back corner there. But one thing that I give you kind of just as advice, you know, what ends up happening is everybody's focusing on the cost of it, you know, how do they install it. I would have a conversation early with your banker. You may not know what those costs are right now, but it'd be great to just have, you know, sit down with whoever you bank with. Obviously, the three of us would love to talk to you afterwards. But just to kind of start some type of discussion so that you know the kind of things that we will need. You know, we're gonna need a couple of years' tax returns. There are just a couple things that we would rather have lined up as opposed to getting a phone call saying, oh, I'm about to install this. I've got 30 days. What can you do? So it's just really helpful for us to say, okay, here's what we think the cost is, and we could overestimate it, you know, and say, okay, here's what you need to do, and here's the timing for it. So that would be my big suggestion. You know, reach out to your local bank, somebody you're comfortable with, you know, to kind of set that up early.
Thank you. I'd like to take the opportunity now to introduce Chuck Carey from Carey Commercial. Chuck, lots of experience here in the commercial space here in the towns represented here. Just some thoughts from you on this sewer process and benefits, pitfalls, other things property owners may want to consider.
Pitfall, that's an ironic word. I suppose that the only thing I could say of any use to you after everyone with much greater authority than me has spoken about it is that people think I sell buildings, commercial buildings, but I don't. For 30 years I've been selling septic systems because that really that's the skeleton of a property, and that's all going to disappear now. If you call me about a building and you say that'd make a great restaurant, when this finally does get into place, no longer do I have to say, you're going to need to get an engineer, that'll take 3 months, and you're going to need to get a plan approved by the town, and then you're going to get an estimator, and it's probably $100,000, you know, and they go, why would I do that? You know, that's all going to disappear. So this could be the integral piece for the turnaround of Route 28 in Yarmouth, because it's no longer going to checkmate a lot of buildings. Some people have been afraid of this happening, and that's why it's been shot down for a couple of times before, because they actually didn't want Route 28 to improve. I know that's a very bald statement, but it happens to be true. Route 28 in Yarmouth used to be the center of the business community on the Cape many years ago. Hard for some of you young people to believe, but it will be again. This will help it turn around. There's a number of properties that will take advantage of this. So, would you mind if I ask a couple questions?
Sure.
Okay. Jeff, I think there have been waivers granted for properties with failed systems that are definitely known to be receiving the sewer for sure, right?
Yeah, that's my understanding. You'd work with the health department on that, but, you know, knowing that connections are imminent within, you know, the next 2-year time period, they're working with property owners to try to extend the life of their septic system as long as possible.
I'm curious if anybody has any questions.
Will this improve the property values?
I've been considering that question since Mary brought it up. I think that's a very interesting, I think it'll affect some of them greatly and others maybe differently. It'll make a huge difference for the larger properties, especially the ones that are over 10,000 gallons a day. That's a trip line for Title V systems. Over 10,000 gallons a day is over 90-unit hotel. I forget how many seat restaurant, but the large systems, that's the official term, right? Large systems. They go into a very rigorous inspection scenario and all that stuff. That's all going to change.
Chuck, you mentioned something that I want to pose this in the form of a question, and maybe Jeff can give an answer. You talked about certain problems would disappear as relates to some properties. I know there are some properties like restaurants, for example, who may have the square footage to have 100 seats in their restaurant. But right now, because of the design flow of their septic system, they can only have 50. When you hook up to this system, would it be possible, if you have all of the other things in place in terms of square footage, et cetera, to actually be able to elevate to the design flow of a 100-seat restaurant?
Yeah, that's a good question. And in our phase one, at least for Yarmouth, and that's, it might be different for, Dennis or Hyannis, but, in phase one in the Yarmouth system, we've anticipated a 40% expansion of flows, anticipating that people might want to increase that. There is a process, or will be a process in place where you have to apply, and the sewer commissioners, which are also our Board of Selectmen, will approve that increased flow. So we expect people wanting to do that, and there'll be a place in place to do that.
Okay. Then another question with regards to failed systems, and you talked about waivers and things. Is there any policy in place in town right now about giving people time to not have to incur the considerable expense to replace a system now, only to find out in a couple of years they've got to spend the money we've talked about to hook onto the system? And how is the town handling that right now, as far as you know?
Yeah, I described the Board of Health with their policy statement. It's a one-page document. It's available online. And we talked about it, the 2 years to connect, but there are exceptions to that within that policy. Certainly the health department is trying to work with people with regard to failed systems, but also if you've just invested some money recently in upgrading your system, you have a little bit longer time to connect depending on your individual circumstances. So there's some flexibility there.
So that seems like a lot of individualized, case-by-case determinations coming down the road.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Jeff, is there anything else? I know you might be a little short on time. Is there anything else that you think is important to let some folks know about this upcoming phase one process?
Yeah, I think it would be helpful to talk about the good news. There's been a lot of, traffic impacts, things like that, but, one half of that collection system that's really the most impactful to businesses and people traveling Route 28 is complete. We're complete with the collection system installation from the Parkers River Bridge all the way to the Dennis Town line. So this remaining half of construction will be unfolding over the next 2 years, but it's a good milestone that we're at right now to have half of our collection system complete.
That's great news. That is good news. All right. Yes, ma'am.
I apologize for my confusion, but is the betterment fee start in 2 years when this starts, or is it when you're eligible, when your phase comes up?
It's when your phase comes up. So if you're here and not in phase one, it's not going to be until you have the ability to connect. And if you're, let's say, in phase two, that's going to, or in four, that's going to be potentially 20 years from now. Yes.
I may be rich by then. Who knows?
Anything else, ma'am? I saw your hand in the back. Yes, ma'am.
I know that we talked about if they have failed systems working, the health department will work with them. But what if you buy a property, or you're looking at a property for your business right now, and you've got a septic, you've got to go through all that septic in order to get it, to buy this property. And are they gonna make us have to upgrade our system, and then in 2 years, or 4 years, or 20 years, we're going to have to pay the hookup fees? Or where is that case-by-case thing you're talking about? If you buy an existing business building, what goes on with the septic, basically?
Yeah, that's going to be a case-by-case basis. The flexibility that I'm aware of that's been granted to a number of property owners is typically in phase one, because they know the connections are imminent. There's an absolute schedule for that. They know when that'll be available. If you're in future phases, I think that's a totally different discussion. And the best way to get an answer to that is to reach out to the health department about your particular circumstance, and they can kind of walk you through that.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
The handout says betterment fee can be paid over 30 years. I thought I heard you say 20.
Typically, there's a 20-year time frame, but there is the town is making allowances to extend that up to 30 years.
Does that require a specific approval to go from 20 to 30?
You can work with the assessing department to determine what the schedule is that you'd like that to be. There was a town meeting process that allowed us to go up to 30, but you don't have to go out to the maximum 30 if you'd like. You could do the more typical 20, but there is some flexibility in there for you to pick what's right for you.
Are those notes assumable if they sell the property?
Yes.
thought there was a question up front. Did I miss you, sir?
No, it was.
Okay, all right. Yes, sir.
So I just have a question about logistics. So if the plant is operational on or about January 1st to 28th, and there's 550 stubs, and there's a 2-year amnesty to connect, if you will, how does the plant operate if they don't have enough flow? Because naturally, people are just going to kick it down the road to the end. And then I get concerned about, are there enough contractors to field all those connections in that time period without being kind of measured in some way by the town? Because I don't, if the plant doesn't have flow, it can't operate really, consistent flow. So is there anything to address that, or is it just gonna see how it goes?
Well, that's an excellent question. That's one of the things we're working through right now with our engineering team, is the whole ramp up. Yarmouth is not in the situation like our neighbors in Barnstable are, where they have an existing system and they're simply expanding it. So we have some unique challenges with regards to building a brand new system. We're looking at the different options, whether it's to bring in some of the septage to the treatment plant, the wastewater treatment plant, to see if we can seed the system and start with a slow ramp up. We also do know that there are some property owners that want to connect like yesterday because of failed systems, or just wanting to get out of that, functioning their own really on-site treatment plant. They just would like to be out of that business. So we do feel like there's going to be some pretty quick connections, but we're definitely working through what the transition plan looks like.
Yes, Mike?
When you, as an existing business, if you have your stub hooked up as you're going through your phase here, are you anticipating problems or blockages on the main road on 28 during these hookups on every single business as they hook up to the system itself?
The short answer is no. So the traffic impacts you're seeing today is because we're putting in the collection system and the stubs to the property line. So we expect that most properties will be able to connect from their side of the property and therefore not impact the road.
Yes, ma'am.
Subject, if you're halfway down at Harper's River Bridge, that means there's how long will it take to get to the Hyannis line, and when will that happen, and will you cease doing that during the summer? Or, yeah.
Yes, there's a summer moratorium for work on Route 28. We expect that to continue. That's happened the last 2 years, and we expect 2 more years of construction, and that same thing, no work in the summertime.
And that summertime starts when and ends when?
Typically, it's Memorial Day to Labor Day. There has been allowance for a couple of weeks just to complete some work into June if the work is done before school's let out and it gets really busy. But that has to be granted on a case-by-case basis. The short answer to the question is Memorial Day to Labor Day.
Thank you.
Was contract set ever awarded or finalized, awarded?
We have a low bidder that's ready to go, but the state, we're doing all this work under the state revolving fund through DEP, low interest loans, some debt forgiveness associated with that. They have not given us the approval to award yet. We're ready to do almost any day now, but we have to get approval from DEP to do so.
Same contractor as five?
The current low bidder for contract 6 is Robert B. Auer. Contract 5 is Diggett. We expect that if everything goes well, Robert B. Auer will be awarded the contract very shortly.
Are there any other questions that any of you folks have out there? Yes, in the back, Mary.
Kind of a related, unrelated question. Is there an effort, or is there already available any funds by the state to assist some of these property owners besides potentially asking for a loan? Because so many property owners, as we know, in Yarmouth have been impacted by what's been going on, having to shut down, loss of business and such. And I know that's sort of parallel to what we're talking about today, but are there resources that the town can point to for many of these property owners who have really been struggling and will continue to do so until this thing is finished?
The best resource that I can point to for connections, and I know there's banks available to do this as well, but the county has an Aqua Fund program as well, so that's another resource to take a look at with regards to connections and there is a variable interest rate program based upon need, so there's certainly a resource there to look at as well.
Just to follow up on that though, Mary, that Aqua Fund presently is only for residential purposes. So those in the commercial context, they're presently, as far as I know, nothing available other than what the representatives from the banks have told us as funding mechanisms. Yes, ma'am.
I have a complaint about lack of communication. I know that there was an article in the Cape Cod Times a few months ago that said things would be posted on the town website. But so many times I have gotten in the car to go somewhere and encountered a detour that just kind of popped up overnight. And I mean, fortunately, I'm retired. I'm mainly going to the grocery store, but once in a while, I'm trying to get to a doctor's appointment, and these detours have really messed up a lot of my life. So that's my complaint.
Okay, what I will say is we're working on that. If you have specific concerns, let me know. The town of Yarmouth does have a communications team that puts information out. We do work closely with the chamber to make sure that the weekly construction schedule is available to those that are signed up and interested in getting that type of information. We also encourage people to look at the Waze app because that allows for showing where the actual construction is happening. We update that on a daily basis, so that'll tell you exactly where every crew, where that crew is. So
Waze doesn't work.
Waze is not doing that. I'm a driver for the town. I drive around this town, and your detours are running into other detours.
You end up in circles.
Basically, and then there's certain parts of the town you can't even get to in Venice. If I need to deliver to a certain area, I can't, because the road is not there anymore. So I'm not sure how the residents are dealing, but I'm telling you, your detours are running into other detours, and you can't get to certain sections of the town.
Or the detour signs are still there.
And there is no detour.
Yeah.
And Waze is not helpful, and Google has no idea.
if you have
So
specifics.
my drivers are driving 2.5 more hours a day to get around detours.
If you have specifics, let us know. We do have a wastewater ombudsman, Ryan Chase, I mentioned him before. He's working directly with the contractors to make sure that the detours are appropriately signed. Sometimes things happen with storms or last minute changes, but we're working on that communications piece. We also have a wastewater email that you can reach out to with specifics. If we hear about those, we'll look to correct them the same day if we know about an issue that's happening.
What is his name?
Ryan Chase. I don't know, Ryan, if you want to stand up. Ryan's here today.
Okay.
So Ryan has probably met with many of you and will continue to meet with people. He's our ombudsman, so he's the boots on the ground, the best person to reach out to get an immediate response.
How about just putting something on Friends of Yarmouth on Facebook?
We do that through the town.
Frequently.
Sure, we do that through the town Facebook page. We can certainly look at how we connect with other social media outlets, but we do that through typically through the town's Facebook page. Yes.
The town, if you follow the town of Yarmouth, we post every Friday on what's happening the following week as far as construction, both for wastewater, the gas, and earth protection.
All right. Are there any other questions? No? Folks, anything up there that any of you would like to cover? I mean, we're ahead of schedule here, but that's okay. Planes land early too. Jeff, anything? Questions, folks?
Yeah, nothing else.
Yes, ma'am.
So we're phase 3, right?
I'm not sure.
All right, let's say we're in phase 3. Is that still like a 5-year between each phase, like 5 years for each?
Typically in Yarmouth, our phases are 5 years apart, 2 years of design, 3 years of construction. We are looking at that to revisit that situation to see what DEP will allow us to do going forward. We may look to alter that. Certainly, if there's an opportunity to accelerate some of those things, we'll certainly try to do that. But the plan as it sits today is an 8-phase plan, 5 years apart for each phase.
Yes, sir.
If you could address the increased cost, if you all of a sudden find out you need a pressurized system, or a grinder system, or just a straight hookup. I mean, I know people who moved Cove area in town of Dennis, and they just got notification, you're in a pressurized system now. So their costs are going up. But they didn't understand what a pressurized system was, or a grinder system, or a straight hookup. Can you tell us the difference, the prices, how it works?
I can talk about that generally. Again, I represent the town of Yarmouth, so I don't have any specific details on Dennis, but I'm very familiar with low-pressure grinder systems. We've designed our first phase in Yarmouth to not need that, to be gravity connections. There are just 1 or 2 properties at the very extreme ends that we know need to pump into our system, and we've already reached out and talked to those people about their special circumstance. But I do know for a fact that's not the case in Dennis. There's a large portion of their first phase that are on a low-pressure grinder system, and there is an additional cost with regard to that pump that you have to have that's maintained and located on your individual property. Again, in Yarmouth, we tried to avoid that wherever possible. That might not be able to be avoided in future phases in Yarmouth. That's still to be determined. But there is typically a $6,000 to $8,000 increase in those low-pressure systems because of the pump cost itself.
All right, well, yes.
In what instances will you need the grinder? I mean, is it a property that's going to be farther off the road, or along the lane, or how?
Yeah, typically, we've designed the Yarmouth system to be gravity fed, and that's one of the reasons for the impacts that you're seeing, is that's a very deep, large diameter pipe, in some cases 25 feet into the ground, in order to flow by gravity into it. If you install a much shallower system, 4 or 5 feet down, you're going to need a pump in order to pump into that system, and that's what many of our neighboring communities are doing. There is a cost savings to construct your collection system that way. Again, it's not deep gravity connection. So you might have to use that grinder pump system we just talked about if that's the only thing available to you. All you have is a pressure line in the road. Or in the case that you just mentioned, if you're have a gravity system connection in front of you, but maybe your property sits 10 or 15 feet below that, you might have to pump up into it. So a grinder pump is just an individual pump system where when gravity won't work for you.
What's the expected life of a grinder system? I mean, before you expect it would fail?
I think the manufacturer will tell you it's approximately 20 years.
One other question that just kind of came up in that regard. Do property owners have any expectation of ongoing maintenance costs associated with connecting with the sewer? I know we talk about you have a septic system now, there's pumping requirements, and you may clean the grease trap, and you know you have to clean the grease trap, not may. But besides having the grease trap there, is there anything property owners are going to have to do on an annual, biannual, 5-year part of their connection?
Other than the grease trap, that's typically the only thing in a gravity system. With the grinder pumps, there is a regular maintenance. Every couple of years you need to have that inspected, make sure it's working properly. There's an alarm system with it too. If it backs up or malfunctions, you'll know that through the alarm system. But there is more maintenance associated with the pump system. Not typically anything that you have to do on an annual basis on a gravity system.
And then I guess one other question is, and I don't know if they've worked out these details, somebody mentioned there, you're selling your property, you got to get a septic inspection report, all right? Is that kind of go away if you're hooked on the sewer, or are you going to have to get some type of certification your property is connected to an on-site subsurface wastewater disposal system? Will there be a form or some other type of document that a property owner is going to get to certify that their property is now serviced by that versus a Title V? I don't know if in the Outer Cape you've seen that, and you close on a loan, does somebody have to present a piece of paper that says, yeah, it's hooked up?
Yeah, usually they'll have like a CO in place once the connection's been completed. So once you have that certificate issued from the town, then you can present that at the time of sale if you are selling that property.
So that becomes the substitute to the Title V inspection report, essentially.
Yes.
All right. Okay. Yes, sir.
heard you talk about, in regards to loans, it was on a resident, you said a resident, is a resident defined as in a residential home? Is that a resident that's living there, or does that also cover a person that it's their second home or investment property?
Yeah, so residential would be residential in nature, so single family, 1 to 4 family, anything like that.
Okay.
I think there was another question. Yes, sir.
I'm gonna go back to the grinder thing again. Obviously, we just had power loss for up to a week. And if you have a grinder system, you have to operate that grinder somehow with power. If you don't have power, you don't have a septic system, correct? So you have to buy a generator or something to back up that system. So when your electricity fails, so that's another cost if you're going to incur as a resident or as even a commercial business owner.
Yeah, you're hitting all the reasons why Yarmouth has avoided these. But you're absolutely right. Typically in those grinder pump systems, there is a limited capacity that will get you through, maybe overnight without power, but an extended period is a problem.
I'm sorry, the grease trap again, is that a separate system that's gonna operate not into the new?
Typically, a grease trap is where your sink waste would go in a restaurant situation, and that goes into a tank, lets the grease cool, and once it becomes solid in that tank, then you can pump it out and deal with it there. The water component of that grease trap typically goes into the sewer system, but not the grease. It isolates the grease so it doesn't enter the sewer and cause problems.
So that has to be continued and maintained?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Great.
One more.
Yes, ma'am.
I just have a question about the aqua fund. I do a lot of home lending, but is the aqua fund, income limited? Is there, qualifications or anything combined in the town of Yarmouth for residents?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that I'm an expert on the aqua fund. I just throw it out there as a resource. I would encourage you to reach out to the county on that. I know they've been looking at different programs. I do know there's a component with regards to need that is really changes from 0 to potentially 4% interest rate, all based upon need, income, things like that. But I don't know all the details. I just know it's a resource. I would recommend reaching out to the county on that. I know that they've been looking at other programs to help supplement or assist with connections, but those are all things that may not be in place today, but they're working on.
Ma'am?
Yes, we moved from an area about 10 years ago that had public sewers, and our water bills were much higher there. So I'm just wondering if you anticipate, how you anticipate, what you anticipate, once all these systems are installed, the effect on our water bills for our homes and our businesses?
At least in Yarmouth, that's a good question. Town by town, I'm sure they're all dealt with it slightly differently. But in Yarmouth, we keep our water and sewer separate. We have an enterprise fund for wastewater and a special revenue, which is essentially an enterprise type fund for water. And those are balanced and dealt with differently. So any costs on the sewer side do not affect your water. Any costs on the water side don't affect your sewer rates at all. Those are self-sufficient funds, if you will.
I understand the only way that you can monitor the water or know how much the usage is by how much water is going in, correct?
Correct.
What happens with a sprinkler system? If you have that, that's not actually going back in, is there a separate meter for that water?
In Yarmouth, we have not considered a separate meter for irrigation at this time. It's based upon your total water usage. That's something that could be explored in the future, but the bottom line is our billing is going to be based upon water usage. Whether there's going to be a discount for sprinkler systems is something we need to look at as we structure our rates going forward.
Another question on pump systems. With the pump systems, it would depend on topography.
Yes.
But also, what about like Captain's Village over here has groundwaters that range anywhere from 10 feet to 4 feet below grade. Can the pipes be put in under the groundwater to do that, or if they have to be raised up because of the groundwater? Would that require to have a pump?
Well, high groundwater is a reason to use one of those pressurized systems, the grinder pump systems, because you can install it out of the groundwater. But that's a specific design question that hasn't been determined, at least in Yarmouth, for future phases.
All right. Anything else, folks? No? Well, then, I'd like to thank all of you for your participation here today. Busy schedules. Thank you for coming in. Again, thanks to the Yarmouth, Dennis, and Greater Hyannis Chamber for putting this together. Cape and Coast Bank is the lead sponsor, and again to Thirwood Place. Maybe you'll be around for a few extra minutes if some folks have some questions individually to speak with all of you. But again, thank you for your time here today. Thank all of you for attending here today.